Men who abandon their kids and later want to come back and forge a relationship with either their son or their daughter. That is like a man going to another man and ask that man to be his son. Because as a man, you only have from your son's birth until he is now independent to forge a father-son relationship. You need to forge that connection. You need to forge that bond. It's a process. You don't just walk up to someone and say, hey, I'm your father, and they're supposed to embrace you and be happy. It's a process. And you running away from your son or your daughter for 15, 20 years is actually running away from that process of building a father and son relationship, a father and son bond, a father and son connection. Because sons who grow up without their fathers, they actually become men very early. They have to step up very early. They go ahead of their time because there is no male figure, there is no mentor who has to protect them and groom them into becoming a man. That's why it's very, very difficult. It's very, very difficult to come 20 years later and then you want to mend things up with your son. It's too late. Yeah, he can acknowledge you as his father, but then to have that connection, to have that bond, it's too late. You are actually a stranger who's approaching another man and say, I'm your father, be my son. And I'm not saying people shouldn't mend relationships with their fathers. I'm talking about our generation that is now abandoning their kids. Guys, it's difficult. It's difficult to start a relationship with your father while you're already a man. This is a stranger. He's a stranger. Imagine a stranger coming to you and say, I'm your father, be my son. It's very strange. It's very, very difficult. Yeah, you can meet up. This is my father and everything. But you will always lack that glue that is supposed to mend your relationship together. Because that glue is created during a long process. You have up until your son, you only have from birth until your son is now becoming independent to forge a relationship with him. It is a process. And most of the time, most men, they run away throughout that period. Sometimes our fathers, they come back while we are already fathers. And then he's asking you to be your father. How, man? How? Because for you to be my father, we have to go back to birth and go through that process of father and son. Biology doesn't make that process. Biology is just one tiny part of that process of a father and son relationship. The biggest part is being present, being active in your son's life. If you're not present in your son's life, you're not active. Don't be surprised when you come back 15, 20 years later. And then you want to build a relationship with your son. And then it's difficult. It's just artificial. The only way you and your son are father and son is biology. Any other way, You're actually forcing things. We need to do things different, guys. This is one of the generational curses we need to break and do away with as men. Can't walk up to another man and say, hey, I'm your father, be my son. He's already a man. Sometimes he's already a father to his own kids. You're actually a stranger asking another man to be your son. He's a man. Yeah, I acknowledge the biology part. But the reality part is behind you. You had from birth until he is now independent to forge a father and son relationship. It's a long process. It is like a 20-year process to be someone's father for life. You can't just rock up and say, I'm your father, be my son. Yeah, I acknowledge that you are sorry for your mistakes. You've come back, you're apologizing. I get that. But the process is behind us. Right now, we're just going to take pieces and put them together to have this relationship. You didn't go through the process of building that relationship from scratch. Foundations, all the way to the roof. You didn't. Now you have to put everything together like you're building a shack. And we need to accept the fact that that relationship of your father coming 20, 25 years later, it's always rocky. There is no bond. You sometimes go months without talking to each other. But a father who actually raised his son from birth up until he is independent and he now has a family of his own, he's got his own kids, is unmatched. We can talk from time to time with your father. Nothing can replace that special bond. And our generation, we are repeating that. We are running away from our kids. And in most cases, your son is angry at you. Your son hates you because of what you put him through. He had to become a man immaturely. He had to bypass the process. He grew up with kids who bragged about their fathers. Every time kids bragged about their father, my father is strong, my father can beat your father. Your son couldn't say the same. You left a big hole in your son's life that cannot be filled. The only thing you can get coming back after 20 years is the biological acknowledgement that you are my father.